now, I want to start talking about something that we talk about often, this whole concept of lifelong learning. And if you've been with us on any of our past webinars, you know that we talk about lifelong learning all the time, how important it is. And the reason is this. Gone are the days where you were able to go to school, whether that be through high school, through a technical or vocational training, or even, going through getting your 4-year degree or beyond, and then get a job and then work that same job for the next 2, 3, 4 decades without needing to take any additional training. That just isn't the case anymore with the rapidly evolving world of technology that we live in. There's this need to constantly reskill. So if we travel back in time to what seems like 10 years ago, but is just over a year ago, January 2020, everyone was just coming back from a nice holiday break. We were getting ready to start our second semester. Everything seemed business as normal. And the World Economic Forum was having their annual meeting. And as part of that meeting, they published this article simply called, "We Need a Global Reskilling Revolution." The massive disruptions that have taken place since then hadn't even come into play yet. So they published this article with a few predictions, and I want to highlight just 2 of them for us today. First of all, they were already predicting that by 2022, 42% of core skills will be expected to change. And if we didn't believe that at the time, I think we all certainly believe that now. Now, the second is this whole idea of Industry 4.0, which we talk about all the time. We'll be talking about it here again this afternoon. But it's this whole idea of how things like artificial intelligence, digitization, data analytics are totally disrupting every sector of the economy, from manufacturing to healthcare, retail, logistics, hospitality, you name it. Everything is being disrupted. And the World Economic Forum predicts that by the year 2030, we will have to reskill 1 billion people to be up to speed with the changes that have been brought about by the fourth industrial revolution. So we see this in our entire global economy. There's a massive need to reskill our entire workforce. I don't think it's just a one-time reskilling. It is creating a culture of continuous learning and lifelong learning. Now, as I mentioned, we talk about lifelong learning all the time here on Webinar Wednesday. And usually we talk about what world-class learning looks like for a particular group of individuals. So just to give you some examples, we chatted with Oakland County Michigan Works about how to reskill people who were displaced during COVID because those businesses were shut down, particularly in food service, retail. When those businesses were no longer open, those people needed jobs. How we rapidly reskilled them for careers in manufacturing. We've also talked with manufacturing leaders. Just a couple of months ago, we had some of the largest manufacturing companies in Wisconsin together to talk about how they're reskilling their incumbent employees for Industry 4.0 technologies and skills. We've also brought on the DOC to talk about how they're reskilling incarcerated individuals with hard skills and certifications so that they can go and work in skilled trades and manufacturing upon their release. We've even talked about how to reskill and upskill our manufacturing executives at the management level so that they can lead their organizations in a world of Industry 4.0. Now, the one group that we haven't talked a lot about in detail, and I think this is probably because they are very good lifelong learners, is educators. We put a lot of pressure on our educators to be lifelong learners, be the requirements for PD in order to keep their licensure, and they have to keep up with the latest instructional technology. And especially for our STEM and tech ed teachers, they have to be up to date on all of the latest industrial technology and practices, which means that our tech ed teachers have to undergo a lot of training to be up with the times. And so what we decided is to really look into our teacher training that we have available to our STEM and tech ed teachers. Does it really meet the standards of, what really our tech ed teachers should have? And so what we're doing is we brought on a special guest today who was himself an educator, now turned teacher trainer. So he's been on both sides of the equation, and he can tell us what world-class teacher training looks like. Mike Dietrich is the ATS Lab Midwest Vice President of K-12 and instructor training. As you can see there, he's even proudly holding up his certification from some OSHA training that he did last year. So Mike has over a decade of teaching experience, from everything from leading 45-day wilderness expeditions to teaching in Milwaukee public schools at the middle and high school level for students with special learning and cognitive disabilities. Mike has his second master's degree in urban special education from Cardinal Stritch University. And now he focuses on this area of career and tech ed and helping instructors get up to speed on the latest in Industry 4.0 and help them be better technical educators. So Mike, welcome to Webinar Wednesday. And to kick things off, can you tell us, first of all, just why is lifelong learning so important for educators? And for those who might not know, what does typical PD look like for teachers?
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me here, Melissa. It's great to be on this side of the table when running Webinar Wednesday. But just to kick things off, I mean, I'm the poster child for the need for lifelong learning. So my background was actually in history and political science and leadership training through wilderness tripping expeditions. So I was often in an alternative classroom setting. And then from there, when I shifted into the gen ed classroom or the more formal classroom, I earned my master's degree in urban special education. I started out teaching students with cognitive disabilities and their most restrictive placement at the middle school and high school level. And then I switched to cross-categorical, working with students with specific learning disabilities at the middle school level. Then finally to gen ed science and social studies and teaching 7th grade math. By the way, a lot of this in a multi-age setting. So I had 6th, 7th, and 8th graders with me at all at the same time. My job was never the same from one year to the next. I advanced in my career and I was really happy about that, but I was constantly learning new things, constantly attending new and additional PD programs that were needed for my ever-changing job, but also to make sure I could do my job well. And the PDs ranged anywhere from student management systems to intervention strategies, emotional and behavioral management techniques, even CPI training, where they taught me how to use safe and ethical restraint to avoid a non-violent crisis intervention. So I've been through the gamut of a number of professional development programs and definitely learned a lot along the way.
And we know that, regardless of how great those programs are, there's probably something missing. Can you tell us, when you went through those experiences, what did you wish they provided that maybe was missing from those programs?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and just personally from my experience, a lot of it was based on theory and philosophy, like teaching philosophy, and not as much in the practical activities and applications. So my positions in the formal classroom, they had a ton of factors that I had to consider on a regular basis. I had to be able to team teach. I had to be able to consider a student's IEP goals, while also making sure I'm meeting certain required minutes. Also while doing standards-based grading and working on different intervention strategies. I never really got someone to tell me where the rubber meets the road, how to do my job effectively and efficiently. I usually had to figure it out based on my own experiences. And then like any good teacher, just beg, borrow, and steal from other teachers and work collaboratively to try to figure that out. So it was definitely a real challenge in terms of, taking what I've learned in those professional development programs and apply it into, what I was facing every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And as wonderful that is, I think a lot of our educators have that particular skill of beg, borrow, steal, but they shouldn't have to have that skill, right? We should be providing the teaching that gives them the practical application that they can take into their classroom. And as I kind of mentioned before, this is particularly important for our STEM and CTE teachers, where really what they're teaching is hands-on hard skills that are industry relevant. So can you tell us what are some of the challenges that a lot of technical training faces?
Yeah, so in the lifelong learning that I've been in, I've shifted now more from the formal classroom where I taught, some traditional course areas at the middle school level now into pretty advanced technical training courses. So, and I've learned a lot from all the teachers that I interact with and the instructors I support. Typically in technical training, a big challenge is the cost. Usually cost of these training sessions, and that's not even including travel or room and board. Usually there's limited availability. And one thing I've learned, even just from my own course studies, there's strict requirements that can be really burdensome, where you have to go through this whole gamut of specific course sections before you can get to the one training that you really want to go to and actually be a part of. So I think the biggest ones are cost, limited availability, and strict requirements that are embedded in those technical training programs.
Absolutely. So if you could, we're going to give you the magic wand that I know Matt Kirkner likes to wave around to people sometimes. So we're going to give you the magic wand, and we're going to say, if you can create the ideal teacher training experience, what are some of the keys that you would make sure that are incorporated in it?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, when I look at in an ideal training program, especially after doing this for the last, 4+ years, really the number one important thing for me is for it to be accessible to all different types of learners. And now in the COVID era, or hopefully soon to be more so the post-COVID era, being accessible where people can participate in the training in a lot of different ways. We've gotten really flexible on that implementation. The other key thing is, it's got to provide some type of exposure to new concepts and technologies. So we all know industry is rapidly changing, but there are certain things that unless the physics change, things like fluid power, they're just as relevant now as they were 60, 70, 100+ years ago. What's changing, and that's what we're trying to follow with industry, is how those different types of technologies or concepts are being applied. It's really the application is constantly evolving. Where is fluid power being utilized in industry and for what purpose? So yeah, constantly following that exposure to new concepts and technologies. Of course, it's got to be relevant to the instructor, so added value to the their current offering, or maybe they're looking at future course offerings. And then also, the spec ed teacher in me always things should be individualized. Let's make it so that we can have folks come to a training that might cover a wide range of topics, but within that training, we can be really flexible and offer them insight, guidance, support, real physical, tangible things that they can take home to their current classroom. The flip side of that is I love the collaborative nature of, training sessions where if you can get a group of instructors together from all different walks of life, you really start to learn quite a bit. And then, of course, the most important thing of all of this is industrial relevance. It's got to be related to what's happening to these future careers and industrial sectors that are utilizing all of these really cool and exciting new technologies. We want to make sure we're preparing our instructors for what they're going to be delivering to meet the needs of their industry partners.
Absolutely. And that's a fantastic list that you've put together. And as I mentioned to our audience, Mike is the VP of our training here. So he runs all of the training programs that we do for our instructors. Mike, can you tell us a little bit, now that we've had several years of experience doing this, from 30,000 feet, what does that teacher training look like?
Yeah, we're a mission-driven company, and this is what we do. Our goal is to prepare the next generation of advanced manufacturing and STEM talent. One of the best ways that we can do that is helping to prepare our instructors to be successful so they can continue on that mission. So we've started out with a couple of small in-person trainings over the course of the summer where, we had folks at our tech center, let you see here, we've visited some local technical colleges and hosted training there. But really now we've expanded our offerings to actually run year round. They shifted from in-person to now we have 100% virtual offerings. We have 12-week PD programs that include independent work and meeting as a cohort once a week. And now this summer, we actually have several weeks of training that gives the option for both virtual and in-person attendance. Just in the world that we live in now, we're going to continue to do this going forward. We're going to continue to do this year round and offer more individualized, professional development programs throughout the year. But this summer, we're really excited. We're going to be offering, a few weeks of Industry 4.0 training, as well as Ignite, the Ignite program, which is a new course offering that really focuses on exposing kids to a wide range of different advanced manufacturing concepts. So we've got a big summer ahead and bigger plans further down the road.
Absolutely. And we'll be sharing more details on that in just a little bit. But before we get to that, let's dive a little bit further into all the components of a world-class training program, which, you talked about a little bit, and we want to instill that in the training that we provide to teachers who attend our training. So, whether, you're listening to what Mike has to say and you're going to attend our training, or just you're going to use them as standards by which you judge the other teacher trainings that you might be looking into as to whether or not they are world class or not. So when we go and we develop our world class training programs, Mike, what is it that defines our learning topics and our outcomes?
Yeah, the biggest thing, and it's honestly, it's anything that we do, it's really that industrial relevance, making sure that we're aligning, especially for K-12 instructors, we want to align to what the technical or community college is doing. And then from there, we want the technical community college to make sure that they're meeting the needs of their industry partners, people who are hiring students from their programs. We want to make sure that our training, is being driven by those industrial trends, advancements in technology. That's really, really important for us. The other thing too is certifications or some type of third-party authority that defines those industrial competencies. I don't want someone to come to a Lab Midwest training and be like, well, this is what Lab Midwest is telling me I should do, or this is what they think is really important. Is no, we pull that directly from certification bodies. We pull it from the workforce development boards. We pull it from technical work groups, industry partners, community members. We want to make sure that we're building that career pathway and that pipeline into those specific careers. So what we focus on in training is never something that I just make up. It's all the competencies and the areas of focus are being driven by where the job's at, where the technology is going, and how our industry partners are telling us, like, hey, we need people who have experience in these new and exciting technologies in Industry 4.0. I love the picture that you have here because it's a pneumatics trainer that doesn't just have one type of OEM of pneumatic components. It has a broad range, not just SMC or some other type, but kind of a sampling of all. So we really try to use that to drive what we teach our instructors.
Absolutely. And I love that industrial relevance. You'll hear about that all the time from us. Mike, can you tell us a little bit more about how you actually embed that in education, industrial employer collaboration within the training itself?
Sure. The biggest thing, having these partnerships in place, especially coming from the K-12 level, is huge. It gives so much more credibility to your program. When we hold these types of training sessions, and this is a great example here at ISD 917 and Dakota County Technical College, there's probably about 50-50, half instructors, like actual K-12 instructors, and half industry partners that are committed to the sustainability and well-being of that program. We invited them to training. We want them to participate. And I tell all of my industry members that come to training, I don't care how many pneumatic hookups or circuits or PLC programs that you've uploaded or downloaded. I want you to experience what the students are going to experience, because if you're really invested into the benefit of this program, you're going to be involved. So this was a really cool situation where we had a lot of industry partners involved in the training. And then when they go to site visits, when they go into the classroom, they know what students are going to experience. They can easily draw the connections from their facility to what students are in the classroom, both on a conceptual level, but also both physically. These are the same types of sensors that we utilize in our operations, or this is the same type of PLC that we use in our facility. So that's where we really try to bring them in and participate in training as well, but also to even come in and present and be the expert on site and show where the different applications of what those training attendees, what they're learning, how it's being applied into the actual workspace. So we always open it up to industry partners to participate with instructors.
Absolutely. And then that's just, our instructors love it too. They love that connection. And so do the industrial employers who get to be involved. They all love working with each other. You always learn something new. So the other thing that brings a special layer of industrial relevance to our training is that we work to embed the certifications. So can you tell us a little bit about certifications?
Yeah, so I mentioned before, they're a big driver in what we do and how we define the competencies and what is actually going to be taught in a specific training session. Depending on the length, sometimes we're able to actually offer the opportunity for attendees to sit for a certification. It may require some additional work outside of the lab, but we always try to give them that opportunity because that's something that they can use for their professional development. It's something they can use to take back to their HR department and show that, hey, I'm going through lifelong continuous learning. But what we also focus on is here's where what you're learning today, how can it be applied to a specific certification program? So we'll bring in, experts from MSSC or from SACA to come in and talk about where the learning takes place, how the competencies are defined. And we try to tie that in through what the instructors are actually going through in the specific training session, just so that they can draw those connections and see like, hey, if I could help a kid get through a certain certification, that's already going to lead to bigger and better opportunities in their career path. Oh, and by the way, depending on where you're at, you could actually get even more funding for your own CTE program if you embed some of those certifications. So they play a role throughout, and it's really what gives us a lot of credibility in how we offer our training sessions.
Absolutely. So here's the big question. Who gets to attend training?
I, Anyone and everyone. I love when I get groups or pod rotations of attendees where one is a computer science teacher, one might be a more traditional tech ed teacher who's taught woods and metals, and then an industry expert, all in the same group working together and relying on each other's expertise. So most PD sessions that I previously have been involved with in my teaching career, everyone's been of the same background. But here, when we offer ours, we open it up to anyone and everyone. All backgrounds are welcome. It's great to see K-12 working with post-secondary, not just at the technical and community college, but we also have been getting a larger amount of university instructors coming into play where they're focusing on pretty advanced research initiatives. They're employing Industry 4.0 technology, and it's just fascinating the amount of collaboration and what people can kind of pull and pick and pull from each other. And then, of course, even instructors coming from different states with different initiatives, different funding programs. Some schools that have tech centers, some schools that don't. I mean, all of that comes into play. So again, the wider range of attendees with more diverse backgrounds, the better.
Absolutely. And I know everyone sitting in on this webinar is probably really excited to know when and how they can participate in training. So as you mentioned, we have training coming up this summer. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so coming up in the next couple of weeks, we've got our first round of Industry 4.0 training, which is June 14th through the 18th, and that's going to be held at Western Technical College in La Crosse. Great partner of ours. We try to spread these around our territory as well. So that's going to run through the entire Industry 4.0 fundamentals course progression from start to finish. So intro to mechatronics, industrial controls, industrial robotics, and Internet of Things. And then we'll also be looping in additional topics within that, as well as a potential SACA certification opportunity. So that's going to be the first week. And then the second week, we're going to head over to the Detroit, Michigan area, specifically Dearborn. And we're going to do another week-long training on a really cool, new and exciting program called Ignite. And Ignite basically it absorbs a lot of competencies from Industry 4.0, but it goes even wider to include more project-based learning, more CAD, more, there's more CNC embedded in there. There's really cool partnerships. It's given a wide range of advanced manufacturing exposure. So we'll be doing that the second week. Both of these will be offered for in-person participation as well as virtual. We expect the time commitment to be the same, but again, in the world we live in now, we just found out the more accessible and flexible we can make these training opportunities, and the more people that we can get involved. So
yeah, absolutely.
Those are coming up soon.
Absolutely. So, for those who might be curious, can you tell us a little bit what that training experience might look like when they attend?
Yeah, the biggest thing is that when when they're coming in, running into training, we are focusing a lot on several different topic sessions. We're making sure that we're modeling what yes, we're learning about different concepts, but we're also making sure to model how to teach it. So that was the one of the biggest complaints that I always had is we can run through all of this great new and exciting info. When the rubber meets the road, how do I deliver the learning in the classroom? And we try to model that. We use the 7 elements of distance learning when we were doing virtual training, as you can see here. We were modeling those strategies. We talk about flipped classroom and pod rotations. We focus primarily on making that connections to where can a student go after training. How can they go into different post-secondary programs, or how can they make that connection of going directly into the workforce? So we make it as much of a holistic experience as possible. We're also going to teach you all sorts of really cool new strategies, new concepts and technology, and show you where industry is going.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about what you just sort of mentioned at the end there? Sort of, what does it look like as far as the curriculum and e-learning, and then a bit about the hands-on?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, this isn't going to be sit and get. That's, of course, you have to be able to get some type of background knowledge embedded into what you're learning. But again, we really try to get your hands on the equipment, hands on specific technology. The spec ed teacher comes out of me all the time, where we focus a lot on differentiated instruction, what to do with your high flyers, and students who need more support. How can you turn what you take in this specific skill-based exercise? How can you apply that into a project or a design challenge? And then of course, there's assessments. I mean, you've got to be able to teach really cool, exciting technology, but still meet the requirements of your school district. So knowledge-based assessments versus hands-on assessments. And again, what comes after this course progression, or what are the next steps in those future careers? So we really tie this into any level of education, any level of career path. I don't care if this is a student that's going directly into workforce, or into a technical or community college, or even going to the U and to be an engineer. We want to make sure our instructors are prepared to be able to teach all three of those different types of career pathways to all their students.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds extremely exciting. I know we're really looking forward to those programs that are coming up this summer. We're going to move on to a time of audience Q&A right now. To all of our attendees, if you haven't already submitted your questions, you can do that now. We'll take just a couple of minutes. And while I'm checking our Q&A box here, Mike, first question that's going to come in is, can you tell us what the cost of summer training is?
Yeah, again, as a big part of our mission, the cost to attend ATS Lab Midwest training is 100% free. We might even help out with lunch on a few days here and there. But if you can figure out a way to attend in person, cover room and board, or attend virtually, you are more than welcome to attend one or any number of days of training. We're really flexible in that, and there is no cost. My only requirement is I just need to know who's going to be there and when.
Absolutely. Next question, Mike, how much prior learning would need to be completed in order to attend the class? And is there a certain target audience, or would an everyday educator be encouraged to join?
Yeah, great question. We really don't require a ton of prior learning. I mean, it's going to be a lot of whole, small, whole, working within the lab, working with e-learning, as well as the hands-on portion. We do ask that if you are going to if you're interested in sitting for a certain certification, there might be some requirements to go to do some learning outside of class, but really we just offer that opportunity for you. And then honestly, I think any target, anyone who's even just interested. Really, we get a lot of folks that come in where they just want to learn more about Industry 4.0, and they figure, well, it'd be really good to get this training and participate and just see what it's all about. And I've had computer science teachers, traditional, engineering instructors. I've even had social studies teachers come in and participate in the training and see how they can incorporate when they teach certain current events and things. So we really open it up to anyone and everyone. And what we tend to show people is you don't have to be a content expert to deliver the learning. And that's a big message of training. If you can utilize your tools and resources and be willing to be a lifelong learner, you can be successful.
Absolutely. And I think we have time for just one more question. And you kind of answered it already in that last response, but I just want to make sure that we clarify for our audience. Do I need to purchase or own certain equipment or a certain e-learning license to attend?
No, not at all. Anything that you use on sites at the training will be provided by us. But again, we get new and interested instructors to come and participate all the time, and they've never worked with us on a previous project, and that's totally okay. Again, this is part of our mission. We want people to even just take some of these strategies back into their own classroom. If they want us to help in terms of implementation further down the road, we are more than willing to help. But what I like to think is that even if someone who has never done business with us before and hasn't and will not do it in the future, they're still getting something out of our instructor training. And that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. Love the mission. Thank you, Mike, for joining us today for Webinar Wednesday and sharing your expertise and insights with us. To all of our attendees, thank you for joining today. Make sure you sign up for next week's webinar where we're going to be talking about ESSER funds, which I know a lot of people have questions on. So we're going to provide as many answers as we possibly can during next week's webinar. When you get the recording to this webinar, there will be a link to sign up to that. So check it out. Otherwise, we'll see you next week.